Hello all, and welcome to another installment of our Focus series, where we take a closer look at our toy displays and I babble about them for a bit. The area we're covering today was one of the first we finished, back when we had no clue what we were doing at all. This is the first quote-unquote dio I ever finished. It's primarily just a castle from the Prince Caspian movie Toyland that I can't remember which company made at the moment. I added some badly carved foam behind the castle to try to fill the space and add a little depth, otherwise it's just a little landscaping around the castle and an ill-fated attempt to continue the little waterway that runs under the castle's bridge. Castles are always great for displaying figures, and I have quite a few throughout the room. There's almost no type of figure that I can think of that won't fit in a castle backdrop. I find it kind of curious that in the decent run the modern G.I. Joe line had, we only really received one real version of Major Blood. I know there was an early Desert Pack one, so I guess I'm just talking the classic version. I really dig the design of the new Iron Grenadier. I loved the original Iron Grenadier as a kid, but he looks more like a ceremonial guard. These guys look just ready to kill stuff good. And leave it to Cobra to put a sniper in candy apple red armor. This is a before shot of the first forest isle that I attempted. I hated it so much that it was one of the first on my redo list. Obviously Bob Ross I'm not, and my trees were sad. The two foreground trees were just scarred up PVC piping with badly placed roots at the bottom. So here's the refresh. I'm still not 100% sold on the tree color, but the overall look is definitely an improvement. I went lighter on the trees because with the lights off, it's a really dark shelf. Overall, I'm okay with it for now. Shadow Tracker here was one of my favorite original character designs in the modern Joe line. The Predator dreads do limit head movement, but in this case I like the look enough not to care. Another cool original character design in the modern line was the Jungle Viper, here emerging from the darkness. His original gun is ludicrously big and on skis for some reason, and he's meant to be prone but doesn't pose that way very well at all. Hence he gets a new gun, which is really Liefeldian stupid in design, but at least he can hold it. Moving on down, we have the Ocean Floor Dio. This is probably one of my favorite older dios as it fills the entire space and it's busy enough to warrant a closer look. The Soldier Force sub here just fits and is thin enough to allow for some figure display. Originally, I just spray painted the sub black, but it was kind of boring, so my wife painted the rivets, which gave it a bit more depth. When it comes to painting small things like that, it's usually my wife who does it. I have big, stupid hands, and when I paint tiny things, I get real anxious and shake like a junkie made of jello. Here it is with the sub taken out. Dio is really simple. It's just a few rocky elevation changes, some sand, and a ton of cheapo aquarium stuff from China. The fish are from various animal lines like Schleich and Safari Limited. I'm not going to rant and rate too much about toy companies in these videos. I'm going to save that for videos in the future. But I have a real issue with Hiya Toys, who released the Aquaman here. To keep it brief, Hiya makes nice looking but incredibly cheap feeling figures that may or may not move at the joints, and are more often than not going to break in the attempt. It's just frustrating because they're really nice looking and I keep tricking myself into thinking that they'll get better, and they haven't. So I'm just going to end that rant for now and move on. Just a few close-ups of the bigger fish. This dio is fun to photograph and there are a bunch of tiny little details that are hard to see with just a few shots. A lot of the critters here are wildly out of scale, but I'm not really that picky with marine wildlife, I guess. Way atop the next section is the first of two castles I have made by Schleich. Both castles are really nice and something I would have killed for as a kid. Behind this castle is the Tower of Omens from the Thundercats reboot toy line because I didn't know what else to do with it. At the moment I have it set up with my favorite versions of the Avengers, fighting assorted Marvel bad guys with Doom orchestrating everything. I feel like I always have a Hulk dilemma with action figures. I have 5 or 6 different 4-inch Hulks and they're all way too undersized. But for the 6-inch line, Hasbro actually makes him bigger than the other figures, and then he's too big for the 4-inch line. As such, I still don't feel like I have a definitive in-scale Hulk in my collection. Thanks to the Iron Man 2 movie line, I have way more versions of Iron Man than I ever wanted. It was disappointing that Iron Man 2 was the last real movie line we received in 4 inches. It would have been great to have a decent MCU version of all the characters. The Marvel Universe line was maybe the most inconsistent of all the lines I've collected in quality and execution. Some were great, others were really embarrassing. Hercules here is a really solid figure, and the other 3 are okay, but they all have issues. I would have loved to have seen the MCU try to pull off a more comic-accurate Falcon. It's just such a terrible costume. Here's a building I'm guessing most 4-inch collectors have in their collection. I've seen it in at least 2 different color schemes, well, I only have this one. It was mainly at Big Lots, but I want to say I saw it at Toys R Us at one point. It's a nice little facade piece for displaying figures. I have quite a few ruined building dios throughout the collection. They're not quite as versatile as castles, but almost. The original Chuckles came out when I was pretty much done with toys, so I never had him, and I probably wouldn't have picked him up anyway. Didn't really dig the whole Hawaiian shirt look. I had the modern version of that fig somewhere else, but I really like this update. And just a quick shot of some Joes hanging out in front of a Humvee. Down one more level is the outside of the abandoned mine. This one is pretty high up on my list of dials that need a redo. This side isn't terrible, but it does need some more variety in the rocks so as not to look so flat and corner-like. And then there's the other side. My second attempt at painting a landscape background went no better than the first. I got these trees in an Animal Planet Toys R Us set, and as trees in this scale are really nearly non-existent, I became married to the idea that I had to use them. I'll just make my own trees when I revisit this one. For now, I've got a few of my favorite toys just chilling out here. I love mechas. Giant robot suits are right up at the top of Cool Shit Mountain. These are from the Acid Rain series, a toy line that I don't have a ton of because they've gotten a bit overpricey. Their stuff is great though. The bigger mech transforms into a tank thing, but I honestly couldn't tell you how anymore as I usually just leave my transformers in robot mode. The smaller Laurel has been released in quite a few variations of paint and accessories, and I've been tempted to get a few of them, but I've only got the one. This is my newest mecha from Joy Toy, the Fear. It's the biggest so far and it's awesome once you get it together. It comes with 10 pieces of armor with little tiny straps and clasps, and when you have my aforementioned big stupid hands, it can be challenging securing all of them. It took me well over an hour, and they won't ever be coming off again. And finally, a shot at my older Joy Toy mecha. They're just great toys all around. Below all that, we have the inside of the mine. The tracks are Lego with the studs sculpted away. Being Lego, the plan was to build some mine carts, but I never have. Quick closer look at the left where the tracks come in. It's pretty tall for a mine, I know, but its location down in a corner made it so it needed to be. And here's the other side empty with a small platform bridge to connect the two sides. Being such a dark dio, it helps to fill it with color, and the Fortnite line is as vibrant as I have. I know very little about that game, I've never played it, but the toys from Jazzwares, a line that's still going strong as I make this video, has been almost a perfect toy line, honestly. The figures are well articulated, durable, and there's a terrific variety of character designs that range from the absurd to the badass. They're very affordable as well, and I can find them out hunting at retail. No other current toy line in this scale can say most any of these things. Yeah, I'll stop shilling for Jazzwares now. I will say that, personally, the media that an action figure line is based off has never been all that important to me if the toys were good. I rarely even got to see the G.I. Joe cartoon when it was on in the 80s, nor did I read the comics, but G.I. Joe just had great toys, so that's what I collected. In my quest to use all the space I comfortably can, I've put this elevated platform made of foam in the corner. It's covered in sand and has a little deserty feel, and right now houses my Dreadnoks. I wish they would have reissued the Thunder Machine for the modern line, but all we got was this Snowcat repaint. At least Thrasher has some kind of ride. So my father was a real motorcycle enthusiast, and by coincidence collected a Harley line by Meister at his 1/18th scale. When he died, I inherited a few dozen bikes, so my Dreadnoks have rides for days. The weird tank thing in back was from the Avatar movie and fell into my, if it's too weird, you can always give it to the Dreadnoks rule. And the rest. There are some non-Dreadnok figures here, and there are sometimes more depending on where I put them. If I get a one-off figure from a line that's weird, it either becomes a Dreadnok or a mercenary of some sort. As a native to the great state of Wisconsin, it is my geographical obligation to worship the Green Bay Packers and to recite the chant, "All hail Aaron Rodgers and fuck the Bears." Here's my Rancor on his pedestal with his little bone collection. This Rancor actually gets around a lot and is often spotted in my wife's collection mingling with her little critters. Here's one of my few 6-inch figs that I think fits better as a 4-inch figure, the Build-A-Figure Marvel Legends Mojo. I'd like to fill in this little space he's in with light up CRT TVs and wires galore to make it look like that 90s Mojo. And it's just another project on the list. Here's my currently poor homeless Wookiees. Every Chewbacca figure I get looks so different, and I've never really looked at a film image to decipher which one is actually closest to his movie appearance. This one is a temple or training grounds for the Arishikage clan. This one is actually a redo that was once a disastrous mess. Back when I was just starting to make these and making themed shelves, I made an X-Men display, which was just this messy stack of foam painted blue and gold. It was just the worst idea and execution combo I've ever had, and it bothered me so much I redid it before I even finished everything else. It isn't one of my favorites now, but at least it doesn't bother me anymore. And here it is with just some of my Storm Shadow figures versus some other ninja types from various Joe lines. Man, there have been a lot of Storm Shadows. This might be like half of the ones I have, and I didn't even get them all. Back in the day, we had one in like 4 or 5 years, and he was hard to find. I never had one, nor did the kids I played with. It was almost a myth. The modern line just had dozens of them. To be fair, a good number of those Storm Shadows are really nice figures and have some awesome ninja accessories. Can't really argue that a ninja assassin in white isn't pretty gangster, and I'd still buy a new version if it came out. Found this Mortal Kombat skull throne and pillars at Toys R Us a number of years back and built a little arena around it here. This throne is really rad. I could have done without the gold loops for the chains on the sides, because the chains were trash and useless, and I'll probably try to Dremel them off someday. Otherwise, it's a really great piece. I don't have very many 4-inch Mortal Kombat figures, so I threw some Assassin's Creed figures and other one-offs to fill it in. I think Ryu got lost here. The Street Fighter line isn't something I'd go nuts for, but like Fortnite, it has some fun characters, and if they were the same quality as Ryu, I'd be down. Otherwise, he's the only Street Fighter character I have right now. Just a weird mix of figs. The purple guy down in the shadows is a nice figure, and I think he's from Kamen Rider, but I have no idea where he came from. Most of the figs in my collection, I at least half remember where I got them, but that guy just appeared one day. Moving down, this shelf is just for this tank. There are some muddy ruts behind it, otherwise it's just a flat grassland. It's a big tank from BBI, I think, and it's too big to really move around, so it gets its own space. And wrapping up today, we have this ruined building, but this one I actually built. I mean, there's not much to it, it's just carved foam with chunks of basswood all dirtied up. And in the building, I have my Spider-Verse display. I've got a lot of Spider-Men, and they're not all pictured here, but he's not on Storm Shadow's level. Kind of a cool shot of Hobgoblin on his glider, or at least someone's glider. Up until very recently, I used the old Superhero Showdown Toy Biz Goblin as my main Norman, and I still think it's a nicer looking figure, but mine falls apart if you look at it wrong and it can't stand up at all. This guy's still alright, he's a bit bright. He's from some Spider-Man toy line, I think. I don't remember if Marvel Universe ever released a Green Goblin. Another figure I'm not sure if Marvel Universe ever made is Venom. I have two, and I think they're both from independent Spider-Man lines. It just seems kind of odd to me. Marvel Universe gave us Hydro Man and the effing Vulture, but not a decent Venom. Hasbro makes some weird decisions sometimes, I'll give them that. As Spider-Man villains go, I like Doc Ock a lot. I'm fine with the base figure here. For what Otto needs to do, it's adequate. But is there any way to get him some arms that let him do his thing? Is there some third-party solution I've never seen? Because these stumpy little arms give me kind of nerd rage. If anyone out there has a solution, please leave a comment. And that'll do it for this episode of Focus. Thanks for watching and listening to me ramble on incoherently about toys.